What are your tipping habits like? We're being asked to tip everywhere we go, whether you're getting a cup of coffee, sitting down at a restaurant, or going to your dermatologist. There it is, that iPad staring you straight in the eye, asking you to make a choice. I personally got overwhelmed, and it made me wonder, when do I tip and when do I skip? We'll get to that later, but first, how did this all start? Tipping actually dates back to feudal Europe, and like a lot of things in our society, it has a racist legacy. As the practice made its way to the US, employers exploited it to sidestep paying formerly enslaved people. It wasn't until 1966 that Congress amended the Fair Labor Standards Act, offering a meager base pay to tipped workers. Since the 90s, the federal tipped minimum wage, or the lowest amount an employer has to pay someone who gets tips, has been $2.13 per hour. While states can mandate higher rates, that number has actually stayed stagnant in 16 states and 13 others maintain rates below $5. Fast forward to today, we've seen a shift from traditional tip jars to digital tablets, bringing an abundance of tipping options and more ways for the consumer to make up for what the employer should be paying. During the pandemic, we actually saw consumer behavior change a bit, with many generously tipping more often, a shift The Atlantic dubbed the Great Pandemic Tipping Boom of 2020. While the boom has no question benefited employees, it also maintains a cycle where employers justify partly wages, leaving workers relying on the goodwill of customers. And think of how many Karens out there are definitely not interested in bridging that gap. Perhaps one day the US will establish equitable base salaries for all, and those iPads will finally serve their intended purpose as a vessel for Candy Crush only. Until that day arrives, when do I tip and when do I skip? Well, for tipping, use this as a rule of thumb. Does this person's job rely on tips for income? If you order takeout in the middle of a snowstorm, then the answer is yes. Bartenders, servers, and baristas are also a yes, although some would argue otherwise. As to when to skip, etiquette experts say you can definitely forgo a tip at your dermatologist or any other professional who earns a full salary. The same goes with any quick counter service where you do most of the work. I'm looking at you, Froyo. Then again, exercising the power to simply say no is always an option, especially when you've received poor service. So, tell me, what are your tipping habits like?